Ladies, gentlemen, and young ladies, good evening, everyone. You are once again welcome here on the platform for raising awareness. At the one of the international news, we have that Moscow has just challenged the UN. Moscow. So Russia defied the sanctions that were imposed on Iran in recent hours, and Russia has done disembark a military cargo ship on the Iranian side. Anything that demonstrates that the military cooperation between Iran and Russia is a cooperation that is in becoming more pronounced, and that Russia is helping really Iran to prepare because there is a confrontation which is in perspective with Israel. So this distrust to which Russia has just delivered, which is a message very, very strong addressed to the whole Western community. This message portends a coming confrontation between not only Iran and the West, but also and above all between Russia, Iran, therefore the Russia-Iran bloc against the West. China is added to this again. And so, young ladies and gentlemen, in the context of this geopolitical conference, of course, of this news that we are going to speak. But before continuing, as usually agreed to distribute this geopolitical conference in all possible groups, allow some and for others to receive information 360 degrees analysis of the news. So let's go into the depths, young ladies and gentlemen. So, what's going on? There was a highly symbolic this September 28, 2025 on the side from Iran. It is a Russian military cargo plane that landed in Iran just a few hours ago, only after the reimposition of the UN snapback sanctions. And the UN snapback sanctions, we had to talk about it. These are very severe sanctions which prohibit, who even go so far as to prohibit the military cooperation between Iran and other world powers. But you are not unaware that this reimposition of sanctions on Iran and had been rejected en bloc by the blockade of Russia, China, Iran. It must be said that Russia had taken the initiative to submit a draft resolution on the UN table in order to that the Security Council of the UN can postpone for at least 6 months minimum the reimposition of sanctions, just to have a little time to be able to negotiate on nuclear power, Iranian, and everything that is strong about it. Unfortunately, the UN rejected it out of hand, this draft resolution initiated by Russia and supported by the China. So they rejected. They have imposed very serious sanctions, more severe than the sanctions previous. Iran also responded severely to the UN to say that nothing will prevent Iran to continue its program. So just a few hours later, since I think it's September 28th, sanctions have been reimposed. That's it. And so after this, here is a military cargo ship, Russian landing. So it's like to tell the decadent West, and we don't care about the UN because Russia had said clearly she wasn't going respect this decision from afar, these sanctions that she was not going to respect. China also said the same thing. So what makes that for show defiance? Russia has done land a military cargo ship that contains the military cargo. What is it? Who's inside? No one knows. In any case, for the moment, we don't know. But if the Russian military cargo ship has landed in Iran, it is not went empty. It certainly went with military equipment of all kinds, which follows. So it is obviously of an open act of defiance towards the international community. Moscow refuses to apply the restrictions imposed on Iran, and that raises something else. It is the tensions that are rising because the West Decadem sees that it is a challenge. Who does Russia think it is? But the answer to this question, it is very clear. It is obvious, notorious. When we look at Israel, who refuses to submit to the demands of the UN, we see Israel behaving so. So what is the other one? Other states of the world that cannot do the same thing. We are in a world where there are double standards. The UN makes resolutions aimed at recognizing the Palestinian state. Israel rejects, and the worst thing is that on the UN tribune, Israel comes again, that is to say, put one's foot in the dish and use real words inexplicable and make it clear that they will fight Mordukos so that the last surviving Hamas survivors be eliminated. But this is the height of the violation with a tone of arrogance of international law. Where is so this international community. It is true that the delegations which were at the UN preferred to respond by silence and leave the room obviously, but afterwards, what are the statements we saw? What are those who came out to condemn such intentions? Because that's what are genocidal intentions, it must be said. So when the Russia behaves like this, it's very minimal compared to what Israel is doing. It must therefore be said that the sanctions which were voted by the UN, as we said, they now prohibit any military and technological cooperation with Iran. In fact, the objective is to permanently isolate Iran. So Iran's partners still demonstrate that we are not with Iran, our Iran of God. There you go. So this plane is supposed transport sensitive material. This is what symbolizes the will Russian-Iranian to truly bypass Western sanctions. Moscow and Tehran show that there is still strategic partner despite diplomatic isolation. That's it, truth. That's the message. So, what are the issues and the repercussions of such an act that the Russia has just posed? It must be said that it's a military partnership consolidated. This is the first issue. So Russia, which depends on Iranian Shahed drones for its operations in Ukraine, Iran hopes to obtain support in return Moscow's nuclear and ballistic missiles. Here it is, the villa, give and take, win-winner. And so this landing obviously confirms that the two countries have chosen the path of cooperation, clandestine. Well, shall we say clandestine, but the voice of the cooperation, that's it, rather than that of submission to pressure international, because Iran itself has said that he was not going to give in to the pressure. And so we ask ourselves the question, is it that we are moving towards an increased international confrontation, since the West will see this as being a real one provocation, which risks causing increased sanctions against Iran and also against Russia. And so ladies, my young ladies and gentlemen, that was the front page of international news. Thank you so much to share it as much as possible. I will come back soon by the grace of the Almighty with news. It was of course the voice of your humble servant Robert.